Hey, what's up guys? Where you been at? I've been waiting for you. My name is Michael Buffington. I'm the concept art lead in the game development department, and in game development, we do really cool stuff. In fact, we teach you guys how to make games. Check this out. As you can see, we got beautiful artwork all over the walls, really high level stuff. Students are doing really good work here. But I got something else to show you. Come on. So down here, we got one of our concept art classrooms, and it's full of Wacom Cintiqs. And on these Cintiqs, people do all their 3D and their concept art work. They draw directly on the screen, and we have a whole classroom full of them. It's super awesome. Check it out.
Hi, welcome.
This is Jacqueline Jockson, AKA Jax. She's one of our concept art instructors, and she's teaching some really cool stuff in this class. Tell us what you're teaching, Jax.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, welcome to GAM 328. This is Monsters vs. Mechs. This is an upper level concept design course here at the Academy. In the first half of the course, we create our own kaiju Pacific Rim style. And in the second half of the course, we concentrate on hard surface design and create our own mech or Jaeger or Gundam to fight our midterm monster. Let's check out some work. Hey, SJ, what are you working on?
Oh, let's take a closer look.
Yo guys, I got a bunch of cool stuff to show you guys. Come on. So as you can see, everywhere around the department, we have really cool artwork all over the walls. But what I really want to show you is our esports room.
I'm coming.
This is Michael Witzel. He's our tech lead, and he's the head of all the really cool esports stuff that we do here in the game development department. Mr. Witzel.
Hello. Welcome. Come on in. You know, the best part about being here is our game lounge. Here, check it out. Pretty cool, right?
Hey, David, are you busy?
Not for you.
So this is David Goodwine. He's the executive director of the game development department.
Hi, thank you for coming. How we have things set up here is more about the community. Somebody might have an idea about a game or how they're going to make it, and then somebody else has another idea. Community, they feed off of one another.
So if you guys are interested in making games, if you guys are interested in things like concept art or 3D or game design, programming, scripting, game animation, or anything like that, we'd love to see you here one day in the game development department.
Yes, we would.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Apply now at redbullcampusclutch.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Esports Weekly Level Design Workshop. This is going to be our first episode. I am Mark G.
And my name is ArdysOp.
So this is our inaugural episode, and we're going to be showing how to build a level with the flavor set in the esports world. That flavor we're going to start off with is a Valorant level. And what we're hoping to accomplish here is to, by the basics, show how a level would be built using the Unreal Engine, which is the same that is used in Valorant. And just a step-by-step process over multiple weeks. We're going to start by building out Ascent, as well as give the perspective of the esports player, possibly the pro, and how the level designer goes about building this.
Yeah, the main thing that we want to talk about is how the smallest aspects of level design can actually really impact the feel of an esports title, and how things that the average player might not notice, or things that maybe are made and tweaked for different audiences, like the casual player, or things that are tweaked specifically for the pro level play. And a lot of these things are stuff that I'm also learning here with Mark. And so I'm super, super excited to kind of get into this and to see the whole process from start to finish of how a level is actually made and tested.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as we go back and forth and show the process. We're basically going to start with an empty level. You're going to start with the very basics of how do I make basic mesh? How do I move around in this world? And what are the considerations as I start a level from scratch? Now we're gonna base it on Ascent, so we're going to be emulating and trying to build it out as accurately as possible. So we will have some cheating going on where we are actually building from a successful level already. So what we will eventually want to do is build out Ascent to the point of from beginning to end, you see the whole process. If we take any shortcuts or cheats, maybe fill out some of the background or something like that off screen, or when we're not watching, we may do a little bit of that. But we're going to try and show building out almost everything and all the steps you go through with that, and all the considerations as you build it, from gameplay to the look to the immersion of the art and the space you're in. So it's going to take some time, and especially these first couple episodes might be a little bit slow because we're really going to focus on the building process. Like, just slow down. How do you construct something? What's the considerations of constructing even something like this opening area?
Yeah,
And from the
because
perspective of the player, go ahead, Artie.
sorry, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that you mentioned that we were gonna start with just creating this attacker spawn on Ascent, because the fact that there's a lot of stuff here that you don't really take into consideration as a player. This is just the spawn aisle, and you kind of choose, okay, well, I can go down B or I can go down A, and then from there you get a couple of different splits. But there are a few design decisions that you pointed out to me that were probably a little bit more decided and thought about than maybe a lot of people would even think to look at.
Yeah, and from my perspective of playing Valorant, I've played a lot of multiplayer over the years, but I'm not an expert Valorant player. And when you're a level designer, I wouldn't say you have to be an expert at your particular game, but you have to be competent. You have to be somewhat good at it, no matter what genre that is. And when it comes to a competitive game like Valorant, it's even more critical that you understand and test more. So I would drag, Artie into my office, or we would hook up online, and I would build something and be like, hey, can we get together and play this and really test to see what you think about this? And from the competitive player's point of view, or even the casual player's point of view, could be a completely different thought process.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Like, a lot of the objects that we've been looking at so far before the start of the show, we've been looking at just very simple designs, like, oh, this is just a cylinder, oh, this is just a cube, but they're like little things, just how large that cube is, where specifically that cube is placed, maybe a foot down a hall more, or maybe it's raised up by a little bit. Those things are just so intricate, and you can kind of tell that they go through a lot of different design iterations based on what specific pixel you want these things to be at. And a casual player will probably never even think to be like, oh yeah, if this was just 1 centimeter over, I could change this play. But obviously, coming from a pro perspective, little things like that are kind of everything to how you attack a site.
Yes, and that, on the pro point of view as well as the casual player, when you're talking about pixel size decisions, changes, I wouldn't say it's impossible for the level designer to comprehend all that, but without lots of testing, without lots of feedback from the team, professionals, the casual players out there, you'll just never get this right and feel tuned and appropriate until you put it through that testing. And like Artie said, the primitive shapes, when you start in a level design package like Unreal, you are working with primitive shapes. You are working with very simplistic layouts. But taking the time to turn that into something that resembles our futuristic apocalyptic Venice here does help the process immensely. So just making everything in a very, very blocky sense without details, without some sense of where you are, and considering the art vision that's coming down the pipeline, that's coming from the environment art team, the prop artists, it does hold you back. And I believe it holds players back as well. They feel like they're just in a generic gray room or a generic series of hallways. And you don't necessarily have to add finished art to gain that experience, but there are things we're going to go over, just like the basic shapes and lighting, that you can accomplish a lot. You can really make it feel like I'm in Ascent, or even a fictional level, whatever we come up with later on. What will that immersion initially feel like, and how can we capture that without relying on an art team?
Yeah, and a lot of these topics we are going to be covering in the next couple weeks as well. This is a weekly series, so you guys can definitely be sure to find us at the same place every single week, 3 p.m. Pacific time here at ArtU Esports Twitch channel.
Awesome. I think what we probably want to do is talk about what we're going to build out first, some of the considerations. We've given a big overview, the complications, the motivations, but with that, as we build it, I think that will clarify itself. We're going to definitely start right here in this attacker spawn area, and we're going to slowly build forward. And how far we get today is a little bit unknown. Here we are in our first episode, and I want to go slow. I want people to understand what's happening on screen. If you're not an expert in Unreal, that's fine. But we do want to kind of go through the process of understanding why these things are happening. What are these tools doing in the engine? By going too fast and just showing the end result, I don't think you learn a whole lot. It's just like, oh, you're good. That's all I get out of it. So we want to like slowly build it out. And this probably the first couple episodes, be a little bit slow and deliberate. You'll feel like, maybe we need some more. When is this going to come together? I think by episode 3, maybe probably 2, you're going to see a lot of it come together, because we'll have a lot of the basic pieces built, and we'll be able to be play testing more. Me and Artie just running around, shooting each other around corners, or me simulating actually shooting around corners with just little test enemies. But on that note, I think we're going to jump into Unreal and start our process.
Awesome. I'm super excited to see, what we're going to be building there. And specifically, since we are starting with the whole spawn area, I'm super excited to just kind of like watch this come to life, because like we mentioned in the beginning, the attacker spawn is somewhat of a kind of a nonchalant little existing piece of the map, right? Like, it's, you almost never see gunfights in here because it's so far back. Usually if you're going to be rotating, you're most likely going to want to rotate through mid, where obviously there's times that you rotate all the way through the back to go up to from A to B or whatever. But the attacker spawn does have a lot of design decisions that interact with that, and that also kind of allow certain plays to be made from either the defense that pushes all the way through or from the attack that wants to rotate out. And so as we build this from the very beginning, it'll be kind of nice to see like what we can change about the map to kind of really give it some difference and variation.
Yeah, so it is pretty much any part of the level is important. So even if this is a single player game, I always say that every square inch in a level has a purpose. That sounds a little bit ridiculous and overly exaggerated, but it is true. You cannot have wasted space. You cannot have areas just open and empty that are meant to just, let's just put cool art out there. Those type of decisions generally tend to waste a lot of time, waste a lot of resources, and time obviously in development is money, and you're always under the gun to get things done efficiently, to have things moving forward. You don't want the art team wondering what this big empty space is and you just tell them to fill it up. There's always a purpose. If there is an empty space out there and you have a vision for, as in we see with Ascent, we are in this apocalyptic vision of Venice. I've thought this through. Obviously, the art team will give input. You will think about it. How can we make this feel like the apocalypse has happened? How can we make this event has happened? What should we see out there? And that's true just about of everything. Every corner, every alleyway, every piece of an object that's supposed to be cover or even just be decorative. We're talking about a level design for esports. That piece of cover is obviously going to hinder your movement. It's going to provide cover and make it harder to shoot at you from different angles, different directions. So every square inch has to be thought out and tested. Quickly laying out a level, as we can see, I've jumped ahead and I'm not going to just start here. We're going to start from scratch. But this is the start of the attack spawn point that we were jumping around in a second ago, and every square inch is tested and figured out, even the stair height, even the the pillars, everything. So this is the little cheat scene we're looking at, and now we're going to go back and create something from scratch. And how did we go about creating this? So let me open up my starting level. So here we are. Still has a little bit of a cheat, but we'll get rid of that. So in Unreal is an awesome AAA engine that can do, I would say, almost anything. It's definitely focused on best when it comes to third-person or first-person action-adventure games. And we'll see a couple things. I have some test dummies I've set up that we can shoot. I'll go over those in later episodes, how I set those up, but you're going to see how I built them. We're not going to get into anything too technical like scripting for some time. We're going to just talk about building out the level. So in Unreal, the greatest thing about it is you can build anything in here with a very primitive system called brushes. They're tagged as geometry here. So if you look at the geometry, you have your primitive shapes. You've got your typical box, cone, cylinder. You even have some stairs, which is very convenient, and the sphere. So pretty much building anything in Unreal, we can build with these, turn them into something that looks like a real object, a building, turn it into static mesh. Now, when I say static mesh, that leaving it in brush form causes some performance issues at times. If you have a lot of brushes scattered around a large level, it's constantly updating the brushes. They're interactive pieces that need to update constantly. So what we'll do is combine brushes, turning them into a static mesh, and now it's a nice stable piece, far less issues on your performance in building. So if I hit play, we have my first-person shooter falling to their death. So what we're going to do is make a floor for our first-person shooter character. And that's going to be nothing more than a box. And I'm going to drag that in. Now, just like Maya, 3D Max, Blender, all the typical 3D modeling packages, we have our tools up here. We have your translate tool, shortcut W. You have rotate, shortcut E. You have scale, shortcut R. This all matches Maya. You have your snaps. So as we go about, we can snap and not have things be completely freeform. And I'm going to scale this by hitting R. I'm going to make myself a floor piece. And really, I'm just going to guess, since I was playing Ascent a second ago here, how big this should be.
And so even though it starts as a cube, you're not limited to that cube shape. You can kind of twist it and stretch it any way you want it, right?
Yes, they have. The way the brushes work, you can get in there and do a little bit of point manipulation and extruding. But really the power is, now this sounds like opposite of what I'm supposed to say. The power is its limitations. And when you're a designer, you do not want an enormous amount of art options when it comes to modeling and things like that. You want to stick to the basics because you should be focused on gameplay. And when you go into Maya, it's real easy, or even Photoshop, it's real easy to get lost in the options. It's real easy to want to extrude and bevel and make high poly details. That's not what we want to do. We want to make the gameplay. We want to feel like we're in this immersive experience, and especially with this particular game, it's about how I move. What are my sight lines for shooting? I'm anticipating where the enemies are going to come from. This is how I want to be doing this constantly. I don't want to be modeling for too long and then putting it into the engine and like, oh, that's too small, or ooh, that looks good, but it doesn't work with gameplay.
And yeah, gameplay is actually a really big thing that I wanted to ask about, because how much of what we're doing here would influence in a real game development cycle the kind of character abilities or the kind of gameplay that you're looking at from a character design perspective? Do you think that level design is kind of driven by character design, or is it the other way around?
Characters should definitely drive the level design. It can influence. The levels obviously can influence as we go through this creative process. Cool things happen. You know, you come up with a level and someone is like, whoa, that is so cool. What if we could do this? And then you come up with an idea for a new ability for a character. So they work together, but you definitely create characters first. And the levels are built around those character mechanics and their abilities. You don't adjust a character to the level, otherwise it's constant chaos.
I see.
So what I did here is I started with a basic brush, and there's no material except for the default material applied. So what we're going to do is you see some really simple colors here. I'm, for the most part, going to build a lot of this in gray. And it starts off like this. And you can see, whoops, delete that. Not sure why it's not deleting. That's why I hit end. Ha. So if we pull it out, you can see there's this checkerboard paste material on it. And it's nice to kind of helps you do your UVs, which is basically how you set up a texture to look perfect. But we want to avoid UVs as a level designer as well. Don't want to be messing with textures that have wood or grass or bricks. it sucks up so much of your time. You want to just focus on the level, the player pathing, the scale. Does this place look like someplace special without messing around with that? So right now it's just stuck with this checkerboard. If I click on one face, you can see it's kind of lit up. There's a face. And if we hit shortcut hotkey Shift B, it selects all the faces. So now I'm going to apply the gray walls texture. So now it's all covered. So we want to keep them covered. If you wait too long and you have some that are half material on, half material off, it's a real mess later. And the more mess you have in the level, the harder it is for your team, the players, to feel like they're someplace special and they're just playing the game. Instead, they're looking at smeared brick textures over there and a strange concoction of colors over here. You don't want that. You want to be really clean and focused, even from the beginning.
And little things like those, like having a texture over a simple item, it goes a lot further than just the basic building blocks of a level, because we see stuff like that even in the finished design of Valorant. For example, looking over at A site on Ascent, this also ties into the storyline. The main thing in Valorant is these cubes filled with some important material here, but these are spread across every single map, and you'll find them on every single point. And these are just cubes with textures on them. This one's got some light stuff going on as well. But yeah, like it kind of goes beyond just having a cube with a texture on it versus not. This stuff can even just kind of persist through late stage level design.
Yes, it happens. You'll definitely get into the phases of there's two things. You're trying to make a competitive map here, and you're just moving objects around, and you're trying to get the better blockers, better hiding points, better sight lines. I'm too exposed, and we're trying to defend site A here. So you start putting things up, and the quick iteration is to put in boxes in very primitive shapes. And that could go on for a long time, and they could stay there, and then it could just be as simple as the art team just not knowing what to model out of that. It works perfect as a box, and it comes down to, hey, can we fill this in with some fiction? Can this be, part of the story? Is this part of Valorant that we can have these props, these individual pieces around? It happens quite a bit, and you do have to take shortcuts. You do have to come up with it. In a game like, even Uncharted and games that are just really high quality, AAA, everything is just perfect and arted up like a cinematic quality. You still see lots of boxes and barrels because that's what the world is made of, and they really are convenient.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be, hey, how do we bake this into the story, just like you were saying? And sometimes it could just be, hey, we just need a little step up here. Can we just make this box look like a box?
Yes, sometimes you can overthink it. Gameplay is king. That should absolutely be the driving force of every game. And yes, art is extremely important. Character animation is extremely important. But if the gameplay is not working, you could have an awesome, fun game with very simple graphics, very simple shapes, and everything else should enhance that. The art should make you feel like you're someplace really special. The powers of the character should come across as even more amazing because of the visual effects that are happening. But the ability, what happens with that ability of that character is still the crucial element. I get blinded, I put out smoke, I send out a shock wave. Like, that is the key to it, and then appropriately making it look awesome is almost like the second step there.
Absolutely.
So what I'm doing here is another powerful part about Unreal. This is how we model. So I'll get into the editing of these boxes, but right now you could take a brush, which I took with the box, and I just dragged it in like I did a second ago. And what I did is there's two types of brush. There's an additive and a subtractive, and it's under brush settings. So if we look here, go to brush settings, additive. So it's solid, it has the gray material on it. This, I took the same box or the similar box and I turned it into subtractive. That now lets us basically kind of sculpt the additive brushes. So this is a really neat feature with Unreal. It seems strange at first. Just like any new software that has new shortcuts and new abilities, it definitely seems a little odd at first. But once you get used to it, like I was saying earlier, the power of the limitations in Unreal are just awesome, just amazing that I can do all this and play the game constantly and not have to re-import it from Maya or another package. That is done in the industry a lot. You're constantly importing assets, but it slows down the process because you're not playing the game as much. Just that extra step of importing it takes more energy than you think. You would think like, oh, I just import it and I'm done. But you have to check collision, you have to check scale, you have to make sure it works perfectly. And it just takes much longer than you think. As you can see, I am chiseling out the broken end of our start point here, which I think it's a bridge where we start.
Mm-hmm. It looks like a bridge with half of it kind of destroyed, some bricks falling off, and so I can definitely see what you're doing there with using the subtractive blocks and breaking our bridge. And yeah, we can get into it if you want about how we kind of were postulating earlier the specific design decisions of this the shape here, why this half of the bridge was kind of left bigger so you can have a longer sight line down towards B, or this one cut off so that you have a nice way to peek out over at the A, rotate. But I think just as well for the start of it, for the first episode, we could just kind of keep it simple and just kind of try to create a recreation. But something, like what you're making with that kind of just subtractive and whatnot, do you think that that's exactly what they did here? Just kind of a nice subtractive meshing of different blocks? Or do you think that there's like very specific textures for these broken cubes that they just had like a rectangle they just blocked off?
Well, the level designer definitely just probably did something similar to this. And it's hard to say what the final result was. Maybe this bridge, just before they started testing, it was longer. Maybe it was not quite as wide. Maybe it wasn't broken, but led around the backside. It's hard to say like those final little iterations they did after testing. But the art team will come in and take this bridge, and they will see the inspiration behind it. They will know exactly what's going on here, and they are going to make it look really cool with awesome textures and bump maps and all kinds of sophisticated materials. They're going to add that awesome crack there in the bridge. They're going to just go to town. They're going to have the bricks hanging off. That's going to take them some time to make it perfect. So I think it's instinctual that you want to put the brick textures down when you're learning level design or just playing with game development at first. But as you move forward, you start to realize, wow, it takes a lot of skill, a different skill set to make these textures come together and feel like a cohesive place. Most of the time, it feels like, kids with the Crayola crayons. It's just bright red over here and bright green over there and some yellow. It really does come across that. It takes a long time to make it all fit together. And again, it'll distract from the gameplay, and you'll ruin the purpose of a level design blockout. We're losing the fact that we're focused on the gameplay. We're focused on a competitive team sport here, and not, we're thinking too much about the art too early.
I see. That's a really good way to put it, honestly. I mean, I kind of sometimes forget that myself. Of the levels are created first and foremost for the gameplay, and rather than just it being its own thing of I'm making a level so we have a level. You're right. It is entirely the gameplay. I guess that's why you call it a block out, then, huh? Because you are just with your basic building blocks, just kind of making the map before adding all that art and stuff on top of it.
Yeah, that term is stayed on. It's still called a block out. In the going back to early PC days and PlayStation 1 and things like that, when 3D really took off, it was boxes on boxes on boxes in a cylinder, and there was just textures slapped onto it. Now we could do that, but again, I think the power of these modern engines with lighting and things of that nature, this is what we should be doing. We should be using this awesome details and the lighting and the ability to model this and avoid textures and avoid putting a window texture. We can model it. That's another thing about modern engines is polygons are cheap unless you get into like really high poly models coming out of like ZBrush and things like that. Things like this are cheap. They run like super fast. And way back when, that was like super expensive. So you put textures on everything. So we should, as a level designer, just a designer in general, just take advantage of these awesome tools.
I see. And yeah, that is one of the other things too, is performance. As an esports title, Valorant is built to run on most machines. You don't want to lock out a large portion of your user base by requiring a lot of performance like just to even start the game. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of different resource saving things, kind of like what you were mentioning there, that we might talk about in later episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about proper ways to build things, what decisions were made. Right now, I'm kind of getting into. I'm still sticking with the brushes, and all I've done so far is box, box, box with gray texture, and I have these subtractive boxes making the back of it look broken like a bridge. Now, right now, I have no perspective or understanding of how fast this character moves, because there's just no context. I'm on a flat gray plane going nowhere. So I need to build this out and start getting down to the main plaza and put out some details like a pillar, part of the wall, to start feeling like, hey, is this character and space matching Valorant? So we don't have real Valorant characters. We don't have real enemies. We don't have their complete tool set, although they are using Unreal. What we need to do is we need to set this up and move around and jump and kind of compare it to Valorant. How fast do I run from the beginning of the bridge to the end? What does my shooting look like? I don't have crouch in here, but I just have a basic gun, which is nothing more than the basic Unreal shooting that I've edited really quickly.
I see that you've taken out the yellow tennis balls.
Yes. The default tennis balls with that particular sound also is distracting. You hear the same sounds over and over, and you got to make something feel like it's your own. That's another reason why we build these details. You want to feel like it's your own. It's motivating. You own it. You're doing something that other people are stimulated by, instead of like, oh, look, there's more boxes. So what I'm working on right now is you could run around in Valorant, which is awesome. But I also took a bunch of screenshots. So here I have screenshots, and this is done professionally as well. You have pictures of, Venice, Italy, which obviously the art team was inspired by for this, as well as, did this start with the inspiration of Venice by the level designer? I'm not sure. We're just going to run with it and make it look like Venice. So I'm going to use this particular shot just to build from this, and I'm going to make the wall and the pillars, and I'm going to think about how wide it is, how many stairs there are, as well as the distance there. So my first goal is to build out this bridge, because every piece I use here is going to be copy and pasted And suddenly, once I get this perfect and I create a building, suddenly copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, suddenly it all comes together. But these first pieces are a little bit slow and deliberate as we move forward. So I'm mimicking the initial wall, and I can see the initial curb. And some of these details, like this little curb piece sticking up, the base of the wall, this part of the wall, this is really important to have architectural definition. If everything's just flat, what you see is just gray. As soon as you add indentations for windows, extrusions for balconies, these walls having multiple pieces instead of just a wall, suddenly the light, when you light it, it comes across with shadows. Your shooting varies because you're thinking about, oh, I could have the wall this way or that way. It's very motivating to see a real piece instead of just a basic shape. Primitive shapes get old pretty quick.
But they are the building blocks of life, kind of like a cell, huh? I mean,
Yes.
everything here is built out of these basic shapes. I mean, what I've been doing is just kind of running around the map while you were talking about all that, and I just see all these different examples of these building blocks. You know, you've got cover here that's just cylinders that are kind of stacked up on each other. You've got even this over here, which is just a kind of sectioned off cube with the cylinder on the inside. We talked earlier about the boxes, and all these walls are just rectangles with textures on them. So I mean, it really does just get down to that whole basic building blocks. Everything really is these little shapes, and it's just up to the art team to kind of give it a little bit more depth and feel, while the level designers focus on that gameplay perspective. But it's crazy how, as you're saying all this, I'm noticing in the game all of these different examples of this is literally just a rectangle, and yet it adds so much depth to the gameplay.
Yeah, and if you once you start building and you start trying to learn level design, or an art skill, architecture, whatever you're into, you'll start to see the whole world as a set of primitives and very simple shapes. Occasionally that rule is broken. Obviously, in nature, you have a lot of organic chaos going on, but at the cellular level, there's still the way the cellular level works, even in nature, has patterns and things of that going on. But when it comes to like architecture and city layouts and things like that, primitives everywhere, windows, just changing a general shape really quick can make a building look completely different. Having the windows close together versus far apart, and then having a little ledge beneath the window instead of just flat, suddenly changes a building to look from, oh, that looks like a house, to looking like a sophisticated office building because you added a couple extra little pieces. So you'll start seeing it out in the real world as well. So not to jump ahead, I should probably slow down here. So here I'm starting this basic wall shape. Now I want to create a pillar with the light on top, and I want to get this section set up so that I can create one of these in one wall section and duplicate it throughout the entire level. So before I get too far, I'm going to hit play and make sure this is starting to make sense in a size perspective. Does this fit what we do?
Actually, I think you just about nailed what it's like in the game perspective as well. I'm not sure how tall the characters are in Valorant actually, but that looks about right from what I'm seeing here. So, and I can see that's, yeah. So once you make that, you can kind of copy and paste it across the rest of the bridge here.
Yep.
I see. So instead of really just building the whole bridge all at once, you can kind of just make these little pieces to then kind of expand it further. Wow, it's a lot simpler than I thought it was actually.
You'll hear the term modular a lot. It's just make everything modular. And, once you start looking at buildings this way, you'll realize like, oh, that's the same window, but they just changed the texture. Oh, that's the same window, but they scaled it different. The games are made in modular pieces everywhere. It just keeps down the development costs, the time, it takes to develop it, the number of textures, can you reuse textures, can textures tile? When I say tile, it's like, can they sit side by side, just like the bricks we see on the bridge here? Can they sit side by side and not look strange, being repeated over and over? You try and reuse as much as you possibly can. So I'm creating a little lamp on top just for fun, so we can have more detail. So as you can see, I have 1 box, 2 box, 3 box, and another box, and another box. And if I play in here real quick, that actually is starting to look pretty cool. Like something you'd see in Valorant, in a park, in a city. And obviously the lighting has a lot to do with that. Unreal's lighting is super beautiful and renders awesomely. So now what I'm going to do is a little more advanced. So if I'm going too fast, I have strictly been working with the scale tool, copy paste, the move tool. So I've been scaling, moving. I haven't even used any snaps to try and snap it to the grid. I have just free form moving it around. Using the grid can certainly help you keep things together. But I've always been very fast and deliberate about sketching and building on the fly, just because I like moving quick and it just keeps me inspired and moving forward. But you can certainly use more of these tools to make it simpler. So one advanced thing we're going to look at, get beyond just additive brush, negative brush, or subtractive, is we're going to edit this piece a little more detail. So we can edit the points, which we see here. We can also edit an individual face. And you can also edit the edges. Now this can be a little problematic because this is not Maya. And Maya does amazing things. It's like you can model anything, cut, splice, make it as high poly as you want. You can then get rid of polys quickly. That's not what happens here. We have to be very patient and not make something high poly, or it'll fall apart and it gets kind of nasty. So what we're going to do is go to the modes here. We're going to go to brush editing. And this turns on some options for our brushes. You can't do this with a static mesh, which I'll look at later. You can't edit polys and points in a static mesh. So what we're going to do is grab this face, go back to my scale tool, and I'm going to just scale it out so it has that look of a lamp. I think that's good enough. So from here, like I said, I can grab a point, I can move it, I could grab an edge, and it's hard to grab edges. I have yet to find a secret way to grab an edge. You just have to kind of, there you go, got an edge. You can split them. Right here's a little split button icon. If I do that, it'll allow me to split it and add a little more detail.
Oh, wow.
So this is basic things you do in other 3D packages, but it's extremely limited. If I start splitting and extruding and getting all, crazy, and if you're used to Maya, what I say is crazy, you'll be like, well, that's just basics. But Unreal brushes just can't handle that. You really have to stay low poly, which is why I like it. I like the fact that I can't get carried away. I have to stick to the basics. It keeps me in the gameplay. It keeps me away from wanting to add textures and things like that. So I am typing in over here at our transforms. Your transform is basically your location, X, Y, Z. You have your rotation, and then you also have your scale. So sometimes it's a little cumbersome. It'll lock me out from the scale getting too small, so you have to type it in. So I'm at 0.07. I'm going to type it into 0.03. If you want to keep it unified, you can do that as well. So I make this a little smaller, and I'll match 0.2. This is 0.15. It's probably too small. 0.18, 0.17, and I'll match that. And the way I fly around is just like a first-person shooter. I just WASD and I hold right-click and I can fly like this. It's awesome. Maya, by default you can't do that, but I believe you can find scripts out there that'll help you do it.
And so, is what you're doing right now kind of indicative of what is usually done for this kind of stuff? Like, I know that right now you're modeling the lamp that's sitting on top of the column, but what is stopping someone from maybe making a texture that has like transparency and whatnot in it to create kind of a detailed lantern shape, and then putting that just inside of a rectangle?
If you're well, when we're focused on gameplay, that's what you're trying to avoid. And also when you're mixing gray block mesh with art, it gets a little messy as well. You create a whole nother series of things you have to figure out. So now I have textures mixing with gray block out, and that happens in production for sure. Fellow developers have the art team being like, hey, put this in. It's always going on. You're trying to focus on the gameplay, the mission, the multiplayer aspects, and you have an art team handing you art assets. So you're putting them in as you go, and they can look at them. So it could definitely get a little messy, but if you have the luxury of just doing this and staying out of textures and all that extra responsibility, it's just the best. You're just totally focused. One less thing to do in the game. But yeah, if you want to play around, you can certainly do that. Nothing's stopping you. But from a professional perspective, it's better if you don't.
I see. That makes a lot of sense.
All right, I over modeled this on purpose to show you a little bit of the power of what can happen here. And making a decision on these extra details is really up to the time you have to get something done. If you're fast, obviously this helps that you're fast and you could do this. The other part is, as a former environment artist and now been a level designer for a long time, I just can't handle having a level full of that's too simple. I need to be motivated by these shapes, by the world feeling like it's alive. And I'm quite sure that the player does too, even in the blockout stage. When you play, it just feels so much better when you have sunshine casting in your face going through a building and there's fences in the way, instead of box, cylinder, sphere. It just immerses you and gives you more ideas. It helps you think about what could be on this bridge, instead of, I got to go look at images and find something. You just are motivated, and your mind and brain starts cooking up new ideas.
It also helps for point of reference as well. If you're a player testing these maps, and you're just like, did I come from this hallway, or am I trying to? When did I turn around? And like, so yeah, having these little textures and stuff, I can definitely appreciate. Having tested multiplayer maps in the past.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome point, because you here you are, you even know the level, and you might even get lost. That right away tells you that this is not being tested properly. People are just giving you, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. They really don't see what's supposed to happen in the future, art is coming in here. You want the players, the team, to understand what's coming and be motivated by it. So even in a studio, you do compete for resources, and it's not, bloodthirsty competition, but we're talking like, if you're making a really awesome level And the team is like, that is going to be so cool. You get more art support. You get more visual effects support. You get more audio support. And it's not like the other people get locked out, but it does motivate. And the art team wants to work with you. The visual effects team is excited because they can see the level. The art team does not like people going, oh, here's a bunch of boxes. Now, can you put art in there? That just doesn't work. They're like, okay, I got to make these boxes into something. And then you're critiquing them that they turned the boxes into something really cool, but it screwed up all the shooting lanes now. And they're like, you told me to turn it into something. So your art team does not necessarily have to be good at the game. You do. So you have to translate and make their life better by creating shapes like this and, molding it to the gameplay so the art team, when they make something, understand what's going on.
Understandable.
All right, I'm going to do a cool thing now. So here's my brushes. Nothing but boxes. I did go into edit brush mode and scale this face. So all I pretty much did was scale two faces. And I copied my brushes here because I want to keep one version that is still in brush mode. So when I make it a solid static mesh, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. I'm not going to be able to edit them anymore. So I'm going to go to my brush settings, and I've selected them all. And this button right here, create static mesh. So I'm going to turn this into a solid object. And this is going to be cleaner. I'm going to be able to duplicate it everywhere. I'm not going to have to select all these different pieces. So let's hit that button. And I'm just going to put it in the proper folder. Give it a naming convention. So as we can see, all the lines and points disappeared. And now we have a solid static mesh. Now it just doesn't exist in the level. Your brushes exist only in the level. This has now been stored in our content folder. So I put it in my static mesh content folder. You can see it right here. If I double click it, this brings up an editor just made for static mesh.
Oh, wow.
So what I need to do is, it doesn't give it collision by default, so I need to give it some simple collision. And collision is a big deal in games. It seems like, collision, whatever, you run on stuff, you hit stuff. Collision is constantly being fixed and tuned forever. It just constantly is part of the ongoing process. So getting your collision in and accurate early is a very good thing. So all we need for this is a box collision. So if we go up here, we just hit add box. And as you can see, you'll see the little green line box. Now I can select the collision in here and edit it. You see the same tools, which is really cool. So I can edit and manipulate it a little bit. I'll show you some other options for that. We can actually have the collision mimic every face, which is really handy for complex objects. On a bigger game development note, that's super expensive and you would never do that. You would always have low poly collision. But for us, it's great. We can just have it mimic every face if we want to. But for this, we just stick with something simple. So yeah, one more thing I have to do. So the fact that I'm going to do this now, but we're not going to really cover lighting because I want to be efficient and I don't want to go through this later and explain it because of all the weirdness. We will demo it later, but when you create all those brushes into a static mesh, it makes a mess of your UVs. So if we go up here to the UV visual channels, UV channel 1 or 0 is the default. So you can see these messy red lines up here. This is UVs are how you go about texturing. You set up the U coordinate and the V coordinate on a 2D plane to make your textures match properly on your object. So just like what I was talking about the brick textures earlier, so we see our brick on here, you would UV each area here so that they match perfectly. The bricks match perfectly. So for this case, Unreal uses the UVs to help light it. It creates a UV map. So by creating the UVs, when I combine my brushes, it creates this mess right here. So I just need to do a simple fix, and I need to make sure it's set to this. And that's not the best UVs either. It's kind of primitive, but it obviously looks like it means something here. So what you have to do for that, this is about as technical as I'm going to get, is we need to go find our, right here, we need to change that to 1. And I'm going to make the light map resolution higher so we don't get any strange gray streaks or black sections from bad lighting. So this is just for lighting, and you won't see it until we hit the light button. But when you do see it, it'll be quite obvious, which I'll demo later. But if I don't do it now, it just stacks up and you have to go through every one of them. Let me save that. Save. You have to go through every object and fix that, and it's pretty tedious. So here we have our first building block. Here's 2 walls put together. Let's see in the game. I'm about to check in Valorant here. I think I should clone a couple of them on both sides of this and see if we're actually moving, jumping properly. So I'm going to turn this into static mesh. Keeping a copy just in case I need a brush later to edit. I'm going to turn this, do the same process. So the exact same thing. It's now a solid piece. It lives in our folder. Add some collision. Box collision will probably work just fine. You can make sure it's hugging the object properly. And we will change our lights really quick, or our UVs for our lights, to make sure it doesn't turn black from bad lighting later.
So once, oh, sorry, go on.
Nope, go ahead.
So basically, once you've kind of got everything set up here using your basic building blocks, that's going to allow us to do, yeah, exactly that. Just to kind of copy it and paste it and really just kind of Lego our way into the bridge that we're building.
Yes,
So
Lego is exactly it. Modular is just like Legos.
Nice.
So you can see how slow and deliberate this start process is. And making those decisions is rough. It's like, should I build this? Should I build that? What should it look like? How big should this be? It's tedious. It's like starting a story or an essay, looking at that blank screen or blank piece of paper. You're just, oh, it's overwhelming. It's same with the level. You're just staring at a blank. So I think I'm going to put the stairs down and a floor down there so I just run back and forth and we can test the size and scale of this. So the cardinal rule is test and play your game constantly. Don't sit there and model all day and then at the end test it and realize the scale is all crazy. The look of it is off. Something looks strange in the engine. You have to be in the game engine playing it as much as possible. So we do have stairs in our brushes, which is awesome. So you can see how it snaps. I have these on right here to snap to 10 degrees so I don't just free rotate. And that's what I was referring to with snapping. You could have my pillar, and if I turn this on, right now it's set to 100, so it pops every 100. So this could help with your building process. How many stairs do we have over there in the plaza? Are you still over in the starting point, Artie?
Yeah, it's 12 stairs on this first one over here.
12.
And we've got a nice big landing to kind of decide which site you want to push.
So I'm gonna take a look at the, let me just get the width to match, but I really need to play the game because I'm doing a lot of building now and I haven't compared it to Valorant, which is kind of a mistake. It's not kind of a mistake, it is a mistake. So this looks too steep, but I'm gonna switch to Valorant here. Looks way more gradual, huh?
Yeah, in competitive FPSs, one of the main things that you want to use is that headshot level of your crosshair. So once you kind of level up to where that headshot is, then you can kind of use that to scale your way up and down. So if I'm going to be looking at your head right here and just have my crosshair right on your face, I can just walk down these stairs here and see, oh, when I'm at the bottom of the stairs, now it's right at the mid-character level right there. Yep. So this kind of helps me understand the scale of what I'm looking at. And especially when you're talking about esports, that's the main thing, is where's that headshot coming from.
I definitely understand the headshot 100%, but that's you comparing the length and the slope of the stairs. That's interesting to look at it from that point of view. I haven't thought of that before. So that another point of that is, you notice there's stairs here, very similar. Are these the same? Probably 1, 2.
There's 8 of them here, I think.
No, that's different height. So this is probably a different height. And then there's another set here.
Yeah, and you know what's nice is that in a few weeks we are going to actually have a level designer from Riot Games coming out and talk to us, walking us through some of her designs, and just as well, she probably answer some of our questions, like why there are exactly this many stairs, or do you think that this is just one of those things that just kind of, well, they made it and it worked?
I'm sure they adjusted the height. There's no doubt. It's just what was the starting point? You know, if they started on the bridge first and then they adjusted the surrounding areas to be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, I'm sure they've adjusted it multiple times. This slope looks steeper. So just what you're talking about, the headshot, I can't just line up here, come around the corner. As soon as I get in hot headshot on you here, if I move and jump here, I'm now at a different level. So you can't just line up and go back and forth and hit someone, be on the same line as their head. These variances in height make for a more dynamic level, and obviously a more challenging shooting perspective of keeping the player on target.
I see. Yeah, and also like these little bars through here, you don't really get this kind of interaction in Valorant a lot of the time, especially on the sites. It's always clean sight lines. So I'm wondering if this little railing here was kind of made to give the defenders a little bit of, or the attackers a little bit of an advantage if they get pushed in really heavily by the defenders, you know, pushing them all the way back to their spawn. You're going to have to deal with these little bars here, which could add a layer of difficulty. But a layer of difficulty that you would really only want to punish some really over aggressive defenders that push into the attacking spawn.
Yeah, and it's obviously the advantage of the attackers here, because we can look right past, we can see where the collision is, looking right past the bar. But obviously it's a little bit harder to target where you're from. So yeah, all those little decisions are big, especially at a high level competitive game. Every tiny little, like we mentioned at the start of this, is every pixel's important. Every square inch has a purpose. You know, this is not just put here to add decorative barrels and chairs. This is a crouching point, or a hiding point to give you cover, to come out ambush someone, to get you cover to get out of this area.
One of the biggest
Same
ones
with
that I
this.
noticed is over in Tree. There's a little area in the corner where it's just a regular corner, and then they just put a planter here. But this planter prevents you from fully hiding around the corner from this, unless you go all the way in the back. But in which case, you lose your advantage of trying to be entirely up against that wall. And this is just a very simple texture, a very simple shape here, but it changes the gameplay just by having a single bush.
Oh yeah, that's every little piece in here has been thought out and tested. The fact that chairs and tables don't break and move, obviously there's a purpose behind that, because I think we all would love to like shoot all these off, watch them bounce around, but there's obviously reasons behind that. We can ask our visiting level designer from Riot for the specifics of that and what might have gone on behind the scenes. So one thing I'm going to test really quick is just the scale of my speed of my character. And is this correct? So if I run up these stairs from here, I'm pretty much counting 1,000, 2, 1,000, seeing how long this takes. It takes me about 4.5 seconds to get from there to here. Watching the speed of these go past me. It's hard to watch these go past, the little bars. But the actual pillars, I'm going to switch back to Unreal and compare. So these are the little things you do. Well, I have to get this slope to be better. Let's get this adjusted. And these stairs are a little stumpy. Let's make them a little bit longer. Get booted out of our game.
Yeah, Valorant will auto-close your custom games if you're not actually playing them.
Oh, we were running around shooting. That's not counting.
Technical difficulties. Not really, but...
So I'm making these stairs more gradual. Still looks pretty steep slope. So I'm going to make them... the height, I'll make them a little bit more shallow. See how that feels now. That's looking closer. So what I did is I had to change the stair height. So the stair height would have been from this point to this point. And I obviously changed the length so it extended the entire stair out. So the slope's looking a little more accurate, but what I need to do is probably add a floor, which I'm going to copy and paste this one. Copy, paste, and I'm going to drag it down here so I can actually run and time myself. There's probably plenty of people out there screaming, "Why don't you use your snaps more?" This is how I build. I like to move a lot and keep my hands moving, and it's probably from being a painter and illustrator years ago, just lots of drawing and movement. Oops, there's a bump here, or a gap. There we go. But one thing, hey, we got switched over. Let's switch my agent and then go back to Unreal. There we go.
I didn't expect it to auto pull you in there. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. It's the excitement of making games.
So that's actually something that I didn't know. So Unreal tells you when there's like a break in your level. Is that what that
No,
red line is?
I just saw that. Oh, this red line is part of the world grid. I believe this is like the 000 intersection.
Oh, I see.
So the power of modern engines lets me do this, whereas way back when everything had to be snapped, everything had to fit perfectly because the drawing and everything would just pixelate and tear. It would look terrible. So you had to work on the grid. So this is almost like my revenge of goodbye early game engines. I can just noodle away and do whatever I want. All right, so let's do our little test here. From here to there was about 5 seconds. Pretty close. And then this one was 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. That's close too. It seems a little bit longer. I think this side of the bridge is shorter.
Yeah, it in the game it only goes up to about where the second pull finishes.
So it's probably right here. So let's adjust that really quick. So
yeah, I guess you could take a subtractive cube to just that part
I'll
of the
just
bridge
move
right
these.
there.
Yeah, I'll just move them up. Subtract away.
And then the other one that we should look at too is that whole headshot thing with regards to the stairs. How when you go down the stairs, it takes your crosshair from headshot level down to your center of mass.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to set up a little test scenario. Yeah, all of those insights are great. And everybody's motivated differently. Every professional has their own motivations, and including, if you just want to go out there and build a level, Unreal's for free. You're just going to go out there and build a level and try and emulate your favorite game or build a level that's spooky or whatever you want to do. You always have different motivations what drive you. If you're focused and you're producing good work, that's what you should be doing. There's certain professional techniques you'll learn that you shouldn't do this, you should do that. But if you're motivated making good levels, and that is exactly what you should be doing.
So one thing that I'm noticing is that your subtractive boxes aren't actually removing the poles and the pillars and the walls that we made.
That's a good point. They are no longer brushes, so they do not get affected. We turned them into static mesh, and so they have, if I want to edit them like a brush, like we left these as brushes, so if I need to make another version of it, I need to clone them. I need to, create a slight variation. I need to have the brush version. Otherwise, I need to take this and I need to export it and put it into Maya, some sort of, I'm going to save before I forget here, because it's going to crash right in the middle of this. This is how it works.
So yeah, you'd have to cycle.
Yeah, that's game dev cycle. Crash. Why is this not working? Go take a break and realize it's a simple error. I forgot to do this, or it's usually a very silly error that catches you. I don't think I made it quite as uneven as the real one. Let's check the scale though again. Whoa, going the wrong way. So 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4. That is actually pretty close. What about side to side? How long does it take you to go from that side to this side?
Let's see here. I can about 2 seconds. About
It
two
looks like mine's
1,000.
too wide.
1,000, 2 1,003. Yeah. 2.5 seconds.
That's pretty close, I guess. So now let's try the head shot, mid shot. I don't have a real character to compare with, but I do have these silly test dummies. Oh, these are my brush versions. So you can see when we first looked at them very quickly, you're like, what are those? So here's my brush, my brush, my brush, my brush. Here's our test opponents. Same thing. One's crouching and one's standing. And they have a phony gun. And here's a couple other phony guns made of brushes.
I see.
So now let's take them, which live inside of here. And if you're wondering what a blueprint is, it's the scripting system for Unreal, which covers a lot. A blueprint can create everything from a basic script to an interactive object or a character. So I'm going to grab the standing character, which is scripted to die when I shoot it. Go. It's white on white. I can't see. So I better switch. I'm going to switch to Valorant here and test out what Artie was doing. So you're just going straight down, trying to keep me. You're keeping your target the same.
Yep, I'm just I got my hand off of the mouse. I'm just walking up and down after aiming at your head.
So headshot. Interesting. That's a cool way to think about it. When ooh, I got the spike. Would have never thought that. All right, let me try it out in my game. See if this works. Doesn't like switching back when I jump from oops. There we go. I think I'm back. Jump back and forth, get a little weird behavior there. So let's move this character back. Hit play. Trying to do the same thing. Headshot. Well, it looks like a little bit lower. Looks like my stairs might be too steep. Shooting him in the knee. Or I was shooting you more in the waist. Is that about the same distance?
About the same, actually, yeah.
All right, so maybe our stairs are a tad too steep. And you know what? Maybe the stair number is not the best judge. It could be, the number, but I think maybe the distance as well as the height might be the best thing. So let's just do, let's make this.
I think maybe a good metric could be just to adjust that wall that we made, because the stairs are about the same length as that wall unit that we made with the pole, and you just kind of just draw that column down, and kind of like over here at the side of the stairs in Ascent, it's just the same but just slanted.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So let's get this piece on the stairs. Perfect. So constantly moving about and comparing and measuring. This is done professionally. We're basing this off on a real level, which makes it a little bit easier because we have a 3D space to play in. Professionally, what you might be doing is working from a concept artist, drawing or illustration or painting. So that is the same premise, but we are looking at a static image now instead of a 3D space to run around in. So we would do exactly this. We'd be looking at the stairs, we'd be counting them, we'd be running back and forth thinking, is that the right distance? And you would have something in that picture, illustration, concept art to figure out, how can I compare this to my player? Because we don't actually have a game to play. So we actually use this technique exactly the same, but you use concept art. So as you can see, I didn't have to make a different one. I just rotate it. Bam. There we go.
Wow. Oh, wow. That was easier than I thought.
So this looks a little bit high. This looks a little bit high. Rotate it a little bit more. Turn off my snap because it's going to pop. Now we're mimicking an existing level, so we're doing this based at mimicking a level. But again, concept art, very similar. You just don't have the real level to work with. You're guessing based on concept images and what this gameplay will actually be like. So all this tedious measurement makes a huge difference. And I'm pretty sure this is what we do when we think about sight lines, headshots. How high should that staircase be? Should we add another sight line blocker?
Yeah, and these are things that ultimately, you know, when we're talking about this spawn right now, sure, it might not be as thorough, as perfectly thought through, but it is still, you know, relevant. And I can't wait to actually get a real answer on how much time they spent on the spawn for specifically those purposes. Because I mean, just by the way that you can look all the way into you know, the stack onto B lobby, I think that it has some merit being very well thought out in that. But when you get towards a site, you know, like a site that we're going to focus on a lot, I know next episode and the episode after that, you know, that's where we're going to be seeing a lot of these differences come into play with, you know, pixel precision of exactly where these things line up.
And the attention to detail is key. You just have to be patient, and you just, you know, sit back and be patient and figure out all these tiny details. Setting up this entire Ascent map quickly and mapping out the hallway quickly and throwing together A and B site quickly, and then, hey, this kind of feels good. It just doesn't. You just don't do it accurately when you go quick, and you basically end up fighting the original layout. If someone wanted to do a scale test and they wanted to see the whole level in there quickly and run through it in a short amount of time, development-wise, I would usually do it and try and get it done in a couple days, a few days, and it would be very sketchy and very much a guess. I would throw it away and start over and start doing what I'm doing here, because this is where you get the accuracy, the immersion of having buildings and areas feel like a real space. It's one thing to make a game that's just all zany and, you know, fantasy based and has no semblance of reality or architecture. But even, you know, fantasy games and games that have more cartoon based graphics and worlds they live in, you usually can relate to a wall, a lamppost, a doorway. You usually have that relation to, oh yeah, this is a house and this is a store and this is a chair. So that's where you need to slow down, and it's the same thing with the gameplay. You know, taking the time to make sure my headshots line up properly, that this height seems accurate, that I can now lean here, crouch, and shoot, and I'm in good cover because of this here. All those little tiny details just really add up to a much more polished level early on. You don't want to rebuild huge amounts of it because you're just rushing.
And it's funny that you mentioned that kind of detail adding early on, but it is important to add it at some point. And I'm noticing now, having spent a whole lot of time in this level, with you today, that I can't see a given sun, and there's a lot of different directions that light shafts are coming from. I just thought I
Oh
would
yeah,
notice
there's one
that,
here.
and
Oh, you're flying around. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I can't tell where the sun is actually supposed to be in here. It's kind of funny. There's
Well,
light coming
their
in this
fiction is
direction.
that allows for it, right? They got this fiction that
Yeah, the
allows
first
it.
light event is kind of unknown, but yeah, I think it is somewhat explained in the lore. But I just thought that was funny to point out.
It is funny because I'm looking for the sun up here now. Look at these light shafts right here, whoosh, streaming in. It's very obvious there's supposed to be sunlight right there, but I don't see it. That's pretty funny. So that's I would assume that's on purpose, and it just plays into the strange happenings in this world. So I'm gonna try and fit in. If I could just box in this a little bit more so we could run around, put the stairs here, copy the walls and these pillars over here. We start to see the semblance of the square and really start to feel like, oh, this is actually the space. We still are stuck in gray space with not a lot of detail. So the more you get in here that feels like you can see shadows and have architecture to relate to, it's just much better on the playthrough, and it also motivates you. So the walls on the upper part here are much simpler. So I could just use, it's about the same size as this. I'm just going to use this one. And quickly, actually I should copy the stairs first. So the stairs meet right here, it seems like. So grab these stairs, copy, paste, rotate. Oops, get my snaps back on. We already figured this out. Let's copy it over. Make sure I place it accordingly, matches up. And there's little, these little pieces here. Not really a big deal. Well, that one's kind of off. Is this one off too? Oh, this one's not off. It's like one needs to be moved up a little bit. Go. These little gaps in a level block out, not a big deal. If a player gets stuck there, that is a big deal. You don't want collision messing with gameplay testing. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to try and flesh this out so we can run up and down those stairs and feel like we have a decent start to our attacker starting area.
Yeah, and so within just a couple hours of building this and kind of going back and forth between our reference images, in this case, our reference level, we actually already have something that's run-aroundable, playable, expandable, modular.
Oh, we actually had less stairs here, huh? I messed that up.
Yeah, only 8 on that side.
So let's knock this down to 8, see how that changes it. Bah! That's not good.
But it is really cool to see how much has come together so fast. Looking at like an entire blank space when you want to create a level as intricate and detailed as Ascent, just seeing what we've made in 1 2 hour session really has me kind of thinking about the scale of how this stuff is made, and especially when you have an entire team of people dedicated to it, a full work week.
Yeah, they working 80 hours a day on this is 8, not 80 hours, 8 hours a day. Obviously, you get a lot done, and you make a lot of mistakes and figure out a lot without getting distracted, and you have gameplay testers around to help you figure these things out, which is it's so much fun to like have people just play the game and give your feedback right away. Obviously, we could do that on our own if we want. You get your friends to do it. But if you're building something independent and Unreal, it's a little difficult to just have someone, if they have the Unreal Engine, you can have them play it, but they're not actually going to play it in Valorant. So some of it is doing what we did here and taking liberties with gameplay and setting up our own silly enemies made of brushes. And those silly enemies are actually totally legit, being able to shoot something like that and pretend you have enemies out. Having pretend enemies to actually play the game instead of just, I would say, targets. I have targets also set up we can look at. Those are a little anticlimactic. It could help tune your character to start, but you really do need like figures that look like people, and you could take headshots and everything.
Yeah, especially when you get into sight lines and stuff like that. But I want to touch on one of the things you said earlier about iterative testing. So it's better to just kind of go slowly and kind of step by step and then test every now and again than it is to just build a whole level, like just go for it and then start to jump into it after you're kind of done with everything. It the way that we're doing it now with kind of bits and pieces at a time, testing. Is there any particular reason that that's better? I'm assuming it's because of the fact that it can get messy over time if you don't do that, right?
Yeah, you can make a lot of mistakes and build a lot without catching those mistakes, without having other having players, testers, other professional developers just give their perspective. You know, like you gave the perspective of, I'm just going to line up the headshot and go down the stairs and see where it ends up. I would have never thought of that. So it helps a lot when you want the general public involved and you want like a really accurate testing, or even the professionals. Like, is this really competitive? Will this work as a map? How does this fit into our game as a whole? That you have to wait till that's polished to a point where you feel confident that it's going to be a competent test. If you have someone test something that's too rough, you get too many conflicting opinions. They can't look past the bad art, the hole in the wall, the strange, just lots of little things you have to eliminate. But when it comes to your fellow developers and they understand what you're going for, hey, could you play this start area and just spawn over here and try and shoot me like you've pushed up really hard, and let's see how this feels. If they understand that perspective of the game, it can be very helpful. You can solve problems quicker, because it's hard to like readjust an entire section when you have so much work dedicated to it.
I mean, yeah, as someone coming from just the gamer's perspective, a tester and also kind of like that top-down overview of esports, and just kind of seeing this high-tier gameplay iterate over, when this game was in beta versus now, like the small changes that have happened. I have a lot of different perspectives on how that kind of testing can really come about, and so it's nice to hear some confirmation that there is a correct way to really test your game.
Yeah, and the more hours you spend testing, and it's expensive because you just have to dedicate that time. You're talking about hiring people to take the stats, and really set up facilities and have those facilities work properly so you can videotape people and see what's going on. So it's a big investment. It's not something lighthearted. You just do. When you're in the office, you can just do it. But on the bigger scale of like actually getting outsiders to test, it takes some effort. And once you get to like, we're going to put out alpha and let the public play it, it's been tested a lot by then usually. Unless you're a really small company and you're just winging it, you're just like, let's just see what happens, and there's no expectations. But when you get a known commodity with expectations, that could be rough. I mean, you really have to fulfill those expectations, even though you warn people it's early. You'll get a lot of bad publicity really quick, as we all know, just by, having a bad test, even though you stated it was alpha.
Oh yeah, gamers are relentless.
Yes, gamers are relentless. All right, I'm going to... Did I copy it? Yep. So what I've been doing is trying to block this out a little more quickly, but I think you can follow what I'm doing. I'm still using the same blocks, the same stairs. And here we are. I've tried to block this out. We're not going to get to the house today. I wanted to block out a house. We're going to do that for episode 2. But I will try and fill in this space. So we could run back and forth here a little bit and feel like it's accurate, take some shots up here, maybe put a couple targets out there to shoot. Just feel like, yeah, this is starting to feel like Ascent. This is Valorant. I'm building this little house here, which I'm just going to make a box. Actually, that house is really close to the other.
Yeah, this it looks to be a little shack. Got some fishing poles on the outside and some of these fancy. This is kind of a recurring Easter egg in the Valorant maps. Is the worm with a top hat and a cane.
Oh, is that a reoccurring visual?
Yeah,
I was not aware of that.
You can kind of find this guy on, I think, every map. I know that you can find him on Icebox too, as well as Ascent.
Yeah, cool.
But I believe it's a little fisherman's hut stall, maybe a boutique, maybe a just a place to buy some chum.
And level designers love putting in the Easter eggs. If they get an opportunity, it's fun. Everybody wants to do the secret level, the Easter egg that everybody wants to find, but it's highly controlled. You have to really think that stuff through, because if you do it wrong, people are just like, oh, big letdown. You really have to think that through, and there's a high level of, designers paying attention to that and what it means and where it is.
Did you ever play Dying Light?
Did not, no.
There's a hidden Mario level there. You can find World 1-1 and play it in a first-person shooter zombie game.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, stuff like that is great. I love that. All right, let's check out this wall real quick. Well, just look at like the addition of those two walls, the stairs, and this hut. It's like, wow, this is starting to look like Ascent instead of a bridge with some poles.
Yeah, I mean you built that so quickly, and yet it was still like the same concepts that we'd started with, and so that's crazy how much that just builds into it. Because when we were starting just building that bridge, I'm like, wow, this is bleak. This is gonna take forever to kind of get onto it. But once we started getting the rhythm, we had things made already. Now that just is super fast.
Yeah, I think the hard part is the testing and making sure the scale and shapes reflect. When I say scale, a door looks and feels like a door from a distance as well as walking up to it. When I walk up to this lamp post with a pillar, I recognize it. I don't look at it and go like, what is that? Is that a bird? Oh no, that's a lamp. Like, those are the little things. Is if you have people testing your levels and they bring up comments like that, Those are things to pay attention to, because if one person does it, is a very good chance that there's a lot. If you tested with 100 people, there's a lot of people that'll see a bird, or they'll see that door as that doesn't look like a door. And you'll be like, what do you mean? It's a door. Like, as soon as you hear things like that repeated, you have to pay attention, because, perception is reality. We're making a fake world here. Just because you saw a crazy looking tree out in a park somewhere, we've all seen gnarled trees that are just all just mangled up, and it looks really interesting in a park. You put that in a game and someone's like, what is that? And you're like, oh, it's this cool gnarly tree that was half busted and really old that I saw in a park. Yet everybody makes a comment that this tree just attracts so much attention and at times doesn't look like a tree. Even though you mimicked it from reality, we're in a game. So you have to pay attention to all those little comments, especially things like windows, shapes of ordinary objects. All that has to be really accurate, or you're going to get, you're going to lose the immersion. You're not going to feel like you're in a real spot. You're going to feel like you're in a fake, made up spot that other people, they just made it up. They just threw it together. That's why alien worlds are so difficult when you play games. There's a lot of bad alien worlds out there, or alien ships. The best ones are the combination of strange alien technology mixed with things we recognize, because we can relate and be immersed in it.
But yeah, exactly. You still know that's a door. This is a hallway, rather than, where am I going? Did I just come from this corridor? Stuff like that.
Yes, it's that's when you see alien games gone wrong. It's just or alien worlds gone wrong. You run around in a ship and you're like, I don't know where I am. Why is everything glowing pink and purple?
I get flashbacks weird. To Zen from Half-Life 1.
Oh wow, Half-Life 1. Yeah, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna just put these little pillars up, and I think we're gonna have somewhat accurate. So I'm gonna break my own rule and go into top down. So I'm not showing a lot of the basics of Unreal. I'm really building, but you could change your viewport. You can change things you see. Is it lit? You're in wireframe. So right now we're just seeing wireframe. This is the object I had selected. I'm looking at the top. If I hit the F key, it zooms right in, same as in Maya. So what I'll do is use the grid and my snaps more. Is I'll grab this, copy it, and I'm going to turn on my snaps and make it snap to 100. And we'll see that 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So they're all evenly spaced, and I'm saving myself time.
See, there's where that hut goes on the side. There's the staircase leading up towards a site with a little fisherman's hut.
So we should compare just quickly. If I'm up here standing, is this height accurate? So I'm just standing, and I'm pretty sure my gun is level. I'm right at the height of the stairs.
Yeah, that actually looks perfect.
I can't crouch. Maybe we can add that in another episode. Crouch so we can get this accurate feel of, let's look at Valorant here. I guess we'll just run around. Have we captured the starting point for attackers?
I'd say just about. You gotta. I think there's a little bit less of a diagonal break in what we've recreated, but ultimately it is the same idea. And then it's got a very similar feeling looking out towards that that hut, little fisherman's hut thing, and staircases. Over to the left where you've got the octagonal little building place there, and out towards the B lobby site. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Gonna switch to Valorant. Yeah, you can see the one thing holding me back, which we're putting this together in 2 hours. If I was working my full day, I can feel it right now in my mind, in my brain. I need buildings here. This is really bothering me that I'm looking into the void. The void in Unreal is pretty. It has a nice skybox, but I really need to put up those buildings because it's bothering me as a creative level designer right now. It's like, all I see is white. Like, I need to start putting in those shapes. So that would be my next step. Even by adding this shack, I think helped a lot. I still need to add the roof and probably improve the scale a little bit. It is pretty close. I think ours is just a tad bit higher.
A little bit, but
yeah,
ultimately it looks the same from the perspective that you were standing up on the bridge.
Cool. This turned out pretty good. So, overview. Mapping out a real level in Valorant, known as Ascent. How do we go about building it from the ground up? Using the same game engine. We have brushes, which is a proprietary little tool for Unreal. We are avoiding any and all textures. The materials I'm using are not textures. I consider a texture would be these tiles or bricks here. Anything that's detailed like this, we avoid. It just takes a lot of energy to make that look good. So we're constantly building shapes that give us excitement, reflect the level itself, but are modular. We want to be able to copy and paste. And on the next episode, we're going to build a building, a structure like this church, and maybe this building right here. And you'll see how the modular, same steps we use to build this is going to be built into this. And we could create a whole bunch of variety here. And it's really going to get populated fast at that point. It's just going to go, it's just going to grow a little bit faster because we can fill in some of the bigger spaces with buildings.
Awesome. And then I know a little bit after that, maybe in the episode 3, we're going to be looking at A-Site and how little details and changes made to A-Site could change pretty much the entire gameplay loop coming from an esports perspective or from a multiplayer perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to keep the gameplay, esports, the Valorant gameplay, whatever game you want to emulate. We have to always consider that, and that's the most important part.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you again next week for all this. This is super, super exciting, and I'm really pleased at how much we did in just 2 hours.
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. I think as a professional, you probably even work a little bit faster. We have some talking going on, but as somebody wants to start off, I think you could learn the basics by following this on how I could emulate my favorite game.
Awesome. Well, I'm super looking forward to it. And just a reminder that this is brought to you in part by the Red Bull Campus Clutch event for Valorant. You can find more about that on Red Bull's website. And just as well, thank you to the Academy of Art University for putting this on.
Yes. All right. See you,
Alrighty.
everybody. See you next week.
See you next week. Same time, same place.
Hey, what's up, guys? Where you been at? I've been waiting for you. My name is Michael Buffington. I'm the concept art lead in the game development department, and in game development, we do really cool stuff. In fact, we teach you guys how to make games. Check this out. As you can see, we got beautiful artwork all over the walls, really high-level stuff. Students are doing really good work here. But I got something else to show you. Come on. So down here, we got one of our concept art classrooms, and it's full of Wacom Cintiqs. And on these Cintiqs, people do all their 3D and their concept art work. They draw directly on the screen, and we have a whole classroom full of them. It's super awesome. Check it out.
Hi, welcome.
This is Jacqueline Jockson, aka Jax. She's one of our concept art instructors, and she's teaching some really cool stuff in this class. Tell us what you're teaching, Jax.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, welcome to GAM 328. This is Monsters versus Mechs. This is an upper level concept design course here at the Academy. In the first half of the course, we create our own kaiju Pacific Rim style. And in the second half of the course, we concentrate on hard surface design and create our own mech or Jaeger or Gundam to fight our midterm monster. So let's check out some work. Hey, SJ, what are you working on?
Hey, let's take a closer look.
Yo guys, I got a bunch of cool stuff to show you guys. Come on. So as you can see, everywhere around the department, we have really cool artwork all over the walls. But what I really want to show you is our esports room.
I'm coming.
This is Michael Witzel. He's our tech lead, and he's the head of all the really cool esports stuff that we do here in the game development department. Mr. Witzel.
Hello. Welcome. Come on in. You know, the best part about being here is our game lounge. Here, check it out. Pretty cool, right?
Hey, David, are you busy?
Not for you.
So this is David Goodwine. He's the executive director of the game development department.
Hi, thank you for coming. How we have things set up here is more about the community. Somebody might have an idea about a game or how they're going to make it, and then somebody else has another idea. Community, they feed off of one another.
So if you guys are interested in making games, if you guys are interested in things like concept art or 3D or game design, programming, scripting, game animation, or anything like that, we'd love to see you here one day in the game development department.
Yes, we would.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Clutch. Apply now at redbullcampusclutch.com.